It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, a burst of culture and activity brings empty storefronts back to life. We'll show you how artists get to showcase their work while bringing new energy to idled areas of downtown Wichita. Also, we reach a milestone in the history of the world's air capital. It set the stage for a century of takeoffs and landings and the industry that has driven our central Kansas economy. Plus, you'll meet two sisters whose Mediterranean cuisine is an authentic art form. And in our Wild Edge report, it's a season of romance in the great outdoors. Birds pair up and get down to business. I'm Sierra Scott. Those stories and more are coming your way on Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by Visit Wichita, bringing you Wichita destinations on Positively Kansas. Wichita, the heart of the country.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Empty storefronts are an eyesore in many Kansas communities, but a new program called Open Studios is filling some of Wichita's empty spaces with aspiring artists. Chris Frank shows us how artists and property owners are having success by working together.
As an artist, my art's going to tend to come out a little bit more emotional sometimes.
Veronica Laughlin is passionate about her art. That's certainly not unusual for an artist. She's also passionate about being a part of what's called Open Studios.
Open Studios gave me the opportunity.
Open Studios is a program that fills empty spaces downtown and throughout the rest of the city with artist studios, working artist studios as opposed to solely exhibition opportunities.
And Open Studios gets artists like Laughlin into these spaces rent-free, generally for up to 3 months, but sometimes longer. Elisabeth Stevenson helped orchestrate the Open Studios idea in Wichita a couple of years ago. Stevenson is an architect by profession and is also director of the Fish House, an artist collaborative.
And there's not a time limit either. In some cases there's a time limit if the property owner has only given us 3 months, for example. But in some cases, like at the Barbie Center, we've been there for a year and a half, I bet. They've been wonderful.
There are 3 of the Open Studios in the Garvey Center's lower-level Kiva area in downtown. That includes Laughlin's Cave Art Studio. It's a very small area. In fact, before Laughlin moved in, it was a closet space.
It's a lovely corner space. I love it here so much. I love it so much. I didn't want to go.
Yeah, we have 2 studios. Both of these were underutilized positions. This was actually a storeroom, and this was just a display area until Open Studios came to us and asked to use them.
Builders Inc. owns the properties. Larry Weber manages them. Weber says Stevenson came to him asking if Builders Inc. had some underutilized space which could become part of the Open Studios project.
Her whole goal was to get them into a permanent type studios. So at this point we have 2 of the 3 studios that we started with are leased permanently now. The 3rd one has a lease pending signature, so we're 100% full of what we started.
Weber says Open Studios rotated artists in and out on a temporary rent-free basis. But since then, the 2 artists in these spots are finding enough success to pay rent.
These artists came to me and said, we'd like to rent them on a permanent basis. And so we went ahead and had them transformed into permanent studios.
Jeremy and Amanda Miller use the Open Studios program to get started with what they call their droneography business. They offer aerial images and video gathered with their drone. Some of their clients are realtors who want aerial images of properties for sale. The Millers say Open Studios, working with Builders Inc., gave them the chance to have a rent-free trial run to see if having a public studio would be profitable for them. The Millers say it worked, and they're now in a lease, paying rent.
We decided to rent the space full-time, and that was the beginning of droneography, and not just a home-based business, but to actually have a space we can call our own, thanks to Open Studios.
The Millers say renting a storefront spot on Douglas or in a shopping center was out of their financial reach, but they say a small place like this suits their budget.
And the price that it does cost us in rent is very affordable for us to maintain what we're doing.
And across the hallway, Laughlin says her small studio gives her a chance to show potential customers her art in what she says is a safer, secure public setting rather than in her home.
I can do this all day long at home, but it's uncomfortable for me to invite people to my home. And then if I don't invite people to my home, I just have a closet full of art.
Again, in these cases, it's worked out for the property owner. Once non-income generating spaces are now occupied with paying tenants.
You want every square foot creating some revenue for you, and the advantage here is that it creates a revenue, plus it creates a culture, the arts. These people are putting out some beautiful pieces that are just great for the tenants to see.
And he says there's even greater visibility every first Friday of the month. On First Fridays, there are downtown evening activities, including an art crawl. Artists put their work out on display for viewing and for sale.
Anytime we have a first or final Friday or whatever event, like there are thousands of people, tens of thousands of people moving around downtown.
One of the conditions for participating in the Open Studios program is being open for First Friday events.
It's a great piece to have to make your building more alive. And so when my tenants come down for lunch to visit one of the 3 restaurants we have, they walk by the studio, they see a new piece, they see activity. It's just really fun to have that as an attribute for your building.
It's a selling point Stevenson would like other property owners to take notice of. She acknowledges it's been difficult to convince some of the upside potential.
I think perhaps some property owners don't want to devalue their space by offering it for free.
She says some property owners would rather their space sit empty than offering it to an artist for free for a few months. But Stevenson says the property owners participating in Open Studios are enthusiastic about it.
Everybody that's donated a space has eventually had it rented.
Laughlin is an example of an Open Studio success story.
Absolutely. No, it makes me a success story because whatever happens this year, I have this year. So absolutely, that makes me a success story.
And Stevenson hopes more property owners will see these successes and make their empty spaces available for Open Studios. This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
The Open Studios organizer hopes artists from other cities take notice and decide to participate in Wichita's active art scene. April 8, 2020 marked the 100th anniversary of the first flight of Wichita's first built production aircraft. Chris Frank explains what this means and why it's so significant.
It was a century ago, April 8, 1920, when the first Wichita factory production aircraft took flight from a grass strip on North Hillside. It was a milestone event for Wichita's first plane-making company. At the time, that company was called the E.M. Laird Partnership, but soon thereafter, the E.M. Laird Aircraft Company and later, Swallow Aircraft. Back then in 1920, who could have thought it would lay the foundation for what would come a few years later? There were a lot of pioneers and entrepreneurs in Wichita's aviation history who helped lay the foundation for Wichita being proclaimed the air capital of the world. Now, if you were asked to name some of them, you might come up with names like Cessna, Beech, Stearman, all pioneers and entrepreneurs in their own right. But if it hadn't been for E.M. Matty Laird and his Laird Swallow aircraft, the others might not have become as successful as they did. Now here's a question that's been kicked around by aviation enthusiasts. Who should get credit for building the first airplanes in Wichita? You think you know? Are you sure? Well, the answer depends on how the question is phrased.
I would absolutely argue with anybody. Cessna was the man who started building airplanes in Wichita. He was the first guy. He saw the promise there, the potential there for that, even if it was associated with the exhibition company. But what Laird did, and here's the key word, Chris, that I think people miss. Laird built the first production. That's the word, limited production commercial airplane, okay, in the United States.
And Laird and the workers shown in these century-old photographs built those first production aircraft in a downtown Wichita location. Something I find fascinating, and I think you will also, is the Laird Airplane Company's first manufacturing site was right about here, where back in 1919, just over a century ago, Wichita and English streets intersected. But those streets no longer intersect because this is the location of Century 2 and the Bob Brown Expo Convention Hall. My, how things have changed. Back then, the Wichita Forum was located there. As the note on this historic photo indicates, Laird's plane was built on the second floor, northeast corner of the Forum complex. The plane was then taken by truck to the grass airstrip across from the Old Mission Cemetery in the 2400 block of North Hillside, where it took flight. That's a few blocks north of Wichita State University, which then was Fairmount College. Matty Laird built his first aircraft in the attic of his parents' Chicago home. He gained a reputation for his airplane designs. Then Jake Molendeck, who made a fortune with Kansas and Oklahoma Oil, had the vision of Wichita being a manufacturing center for airplanes. Molendeck and early-day aviator William Billy Burke from Oklahoma convinced young Laird to bring his plane design to Wichita, where he would get financial backing to build it. That plane, which took flight April 8, 1920, was first named the Wichita Tractor. But William Lassen, who witnessed that first flight, said, "Boys, it flies just like a swallow." Laird immediately changed the name to Swallow. A replica of the Laird Swallow is on display here at the Kansas Aviation Museum. With the skin removed, you can see how the plane was put together with the wood railing. Jake Molendeck and Matty Laird built 43 of those Swallows here in Wichita, but none are known to exist. That's why it's a replica. Aviation author and historian Ed Phillips interviewed Laird during a Wichita visit in 1982 on a day the city proclaimed as Matty Laird Day. At that time, Laird told Phillips about the difficulty of working with Molendeck.
And he said that Jake was just irascible. It was impossible to work with as time went on because Jake wanted it all his way. And Matty was very meek, humble guy, quiet, and said, Jake, we can't expand, we can't do this, we need to be careful with our money. And Jake said, oh, no, we can do this, we can do this. And that's where he got a lot of trouble with Laird.
Finally, in 1923, Laird had enough of Molendeck's ways. He eventually left the company and went back to Chicago to build planes.
Because in 1923, in October, Laird was fed up. And he left, and he and Matt and Jake separated on reasonably good terms. He got $1,500 in a couple of airplanes, and he left. Went back to Chicago, and that's another great success story for Laird.
But the Swallow Aircraft Company remained in Wichita. Two future aircraft legends worked for Molendeck at Swallow, Walter Beech and Lloyd Stearman, who both went on to form their own Wichita airplane companies. Not to mention they're working together at the famous Travel Air Company along with Clyde Cessna. So it's only fitting to remember that flight of the first production airplane built in Wichita 100 years ago, because Laird and the Swallow plane helped pave the way for the plane makers following, who made Wichita the air capital of the world. This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
You can learn much more about Wichita's aviation history by getting a copy of the KPTS documentary Wichita, the Air Capital that Chris produced. Just click on the link at kpts.org that says Wichita, the Air Capital to make a pledge and get the DVD. True connoisseurs will tell you that great cooking is an art form that takes years to perfect. In this week's edition of Wichita Destinations, Brian Ramsdale visits a restaurant where the experience and authenticity of the chefs is reflected in the amazing food they serve.
The reception is one of satisfaction. You know, the food is balanced. Our foods and our flavors, our preparation are unique.
There's two sisters and two olives.
We've been at it for a long time, so we learn how to work with each other.
This Wichita restaurant has chefs that used to call the Mediterranean area home, and they're bringing their unique take on taste to you.
So people are going to get a taste of the whole region.
Rhonda Tubia and her sister Jumana have been chefs for decades.
We're friendly until we have a difference in opinion. And we do have that. We do have the difference of opinions all the time.
These friendly rivalries are partially the reason why the food at Two Olives is so good. These sisters push each other to make dishes that you just won't find anywhere else.
We complement each other beautifully at the end of the day. In a lot of ways, yeah.
These two chefs hope that the food is only a portion of the experience at their restaurant. Part of the mood at Two Olives is of relaxation and enjoyment.
I hope that they remember the whole experience, that they got to slow down if they had mazes. It really is a time to slow down and savor your meal and not be hurried and rushed.
The food comes from centuries of family culture and can be shared on date nights, a family outing, or just a relaxing evening with friends.
I'm ready to go. Nice. Fresh basil.
The dish Rhonda is making is called the Chiopino Tapas.
I'm gonna throw all of this together.
With a collection of seafood, this meal is what they call a fusion dish.
This is kind of a combination of many things. We've been making Chiopino soup for, and every time we have it, people love it. It's a fusion dish. It's the combination of more than two dishes at the same time.
And talk about the perfect fusion. This dish delivers on everything from the beautiful presentation to the smell to the taste. Even the preparation is spectacular.
We're doing the dance of cooking, right? And we just toss it one more time, let that spinach melt.
Techniques that take years to perfect.
It's all in the wrist, huh?
Flipping, tossing, making all the dishes takes skill.
This is ready. This is picked up all the flavors, it cooked down, it looks perfect. It's not exactly soupy, but it's juicy. And that's our Chiopino tapas.
These two sisters know their way around the kitchen.
But I'm competitive. I'm competitive.
You are.
I am competitive.
Yeah.
I am not.
She's not competitive.
And they make food you can only find in Wichita, the heart of the country.
Two Olives is located at the corner of Rock and 29th Street North in the Coma Terrace Shopping Center. For more than 60 years, the iconic Barbie doll has delighted generations of little girls. The childhood favorite has also become a popular collector's item around the globe. Anna Spencer introduces us to a Butler County woman with a must-see, floor-to-ceiling Barbie doll collection of her own.
It's a collection that's almost as old as the Barbie doll itself. Augusta resident Barbara Arrett proudly shows us her Barbie doll display. Actually, it's more than a display, as this collection takes up a whole room and then some. The doll hobbyist says she picked up her first Barbie 50 years ago.
I started when my oldest daughter wanted a Barbie. She'd had dolls before.
Barbara says the collection grew out of a love for her three daughters and a knack for sewing. As a young wife, her husband traveled, leaving her plenty of time with her girls and their dolls. She sewed dresses and more dresses. Soon she even had her mother sewing doll dresses. Her daughter Debbie says these are some of her fondest memories.
My Barbies were the best dressed Barbies ever. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. My grandma always made all of her own clothes, and my mom too, and so when they were really trying to make something nice, why, they did. And everybody would say, "Oh, look at that dress."
Debbie says today the family affectionately refers to her mother's collection as Barbara's Barbies. And while the doll collection started when she and her sisters were children, the number of dolls grew exponentially when Barbara became an empty nester.
Sewed for the girls when they were growing up, and when they were gone, why, then there was nothing but dolls to dress.
Barbara says in the beginning, most of the dolls were found at garage sales or given to her by her friends from her ladies' club. She had a reputation for sewing the finest clothes for her dolls, and people took notice. Today she has hundreds and hundreds of dolls, even coveted celebrity dolls like Dolly Parton Barbie, not to mention the Gone with the Wind Barbie collection, dozens of Ken dolls, and more.
There's Farrah Fawcett in her furs.
Later, Barbara's passion for Barbie grew, and so did her collection as she began purchasing Barbie dolls for herself.
Then I went to work at Walmart for a while, and so I saw all the new ones come in, so I started buying the new ones.
Today, Barbara's box Barbie dolls take up a wall in this room and in another bedroom as well. The dolls have even made their way into the living room. At last count, her collection included more than 2,000 dolls. Barbara says throughout the years she has happily shared her Barbie dolls not only with her own children, but with her grandchildren and now her great-grandchildren. For Barbara, this is more than a collection of dolls. It's a hall of memories and a reminder to girls of all ages that, like Barbie, you can do and be anything. In Augusta, I'm Anna Spencer for Positively Kansas.
Barbara has given away hundreds of dolls over the years. She plans to pass her collection on to her granddaughters and other Barbie doll collectors as well. Well, spring starts the new nesting season for all kinds of Kansas birds. As Mike Blair shows us in this week's Kansas Wild Edge report, every species does things a little differently.
The nesting season brings renewal to one of Earth's most loved creatures, birds. No animals have inspired through history man's fancy and imagination like this colorful and capable group. Born on wings, they travel the world's skies, unbound by barriers of water and mountains and deserts. Riding winds, they ignore time while yet defining annual seasons through migration. Beyond beauty, birds bless the earth with song. No wonder they fascinate us. Of all animals, they are perhaps least limited. And curiously, their lives begin with eggs. This unlikely start has always drawn attention for its strange difference from live birth. In tiny and brittle packages, birds form in shells requiring only weeks to forge new life. And they do so in hasty nests of amazing diversity, some minimal, requiring little or no work, and others built with artistry and skill, seemingly impossible through beak and claw. It's part of the wonder of birds. The nesting season is a busy time. Usually it takes a week or more to construct a nest. And sometimes, especially with young first-time parents, mistakes are made. This robin worked for 5 days before realizing the nest wasn't stable. As it listed during construction, she eventually abandoned it, never to return, and it soon fell out of the tree. At nest completion, egg laying begins. Many kinds of birds lay an egg each morning until finished. Birds produce a clutch that falls within a given range for the species. For instance, killdeers usually lay 4 eggs per nest, but it varies from 3 to 5. Most birds start incubation only when the clutch is finished. Then all eggs hatch at about the same time. One or both parents incubate the eggs, turning them often to keep embryos from sticking to the shell's inner lining. Parent birds leave the eggs occasionally to feed and stretch, though when incubation duties are shared, an unattended nest would be unusual. Incubation lasts from 12 to 24 days and is usually species-specific within a day or so. Then nestlings grow for several weeks before they can fly. Nests get quite crowded when 4 or 5 fledglings are present. And the feeding schedule keeps both parents busy full-time. Many species form large feeding groups that travel and roost together prior to migration. Cliff swallows move from nursery areas to marshes and open waters where they catch hatching insects by the tons. Some species turn up in surprising places, like this large flock of purple martins that temporarily roosts each year in dense trees by a hospital parking lot in a large city. And finally, migration begins. Not all birds make these journeys. Those who live on nuts, crops, and seeds brave cold weather to stay at home. But those needing open water or insect diets must travel to warmer climes. And their passage, sometimes a grand spectacle in itself, leaves the fields and skies empty of abundant summer bird life. Weather grows harsh and the sun retreats. The winter woods fall silent, lacking birdsong. But reminders live on. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Send your story ideas to positivelykansas@kpts.org. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Visit Wichita, bringing you Wichita destinations on Positively Kansas. Wichita, the heart of the country.